So let me just go over a few things to go over from the emails that I may have sent during this time. So one of the things that the university has stressed is that to be as accommodating as we possibly could, and I don't need any prodding. I certainly will be that in every way I can. I may have mentioned this at least one time before, but I grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, so I know everything there is to know about hurricanes. And I also know that there's everything that there is to know about underestimating a hurricane either. So don't feel alone in that as well, because I underestimated this one. Um, they were talking at the top winds of this one was like 87 miles an hour. That's 3 miles away from a category 2 storm up here. So that's crazy. And who would ever think it was that much? Um, the other thing is that they asked for us to come up with a plan to be able to accommodate my students. And I think the best thing that I can do quite simply is you're all go-getters. But what I'm going to do is quite simply this is I'm going to drop your lowest test grade from the three tests that you have. And whatever your two highest test grades are, that will be the think it's the 75% of the grade. So you just, instead of taking the three grades and multiply the average by 0.75, take the two highest. And I think that should be able to accommodate you and get you to the other side. Because it also helps because there were a few other grades that were somewhat lower on the first test as well. Yeah. The other thing finally is that the other test, test number two that we were all going to start before the hurricane started, it will be extended into October 26th or whatever the current number is on the website itself. Let me look at that right now so we can get that taken care of. So currently right now, where it is. Here's the test. Um, it says October 23rd. That is the starting point. And if you notice, it's till the October 27th. So you've got 4 days to complete this test on chapters 2, 3, or 4 if you haven't done it already. Okay. And so you have all the videos and then, of course, the process of innovation for you to be able to complete that test. Okay. So the last thing will be is this class is going to be about the case study that you will develop. I have one individual in their group that is asked to go as early as they possibly can because they have something that they simply cannot avoid. And so with that group, if they could present early, that would be great. But we have 6 cases that I would like your groups to consider when you're going to do your case study. So if you look at the 6 cases, these are all in your book. They're in the appendix. They're listed as Google searches, Apple, Walmart dominates, Uber drives, Starbucks, and Netflix fights. Now, I can also say this, if you have another case in there that intrigues you with your group, I will be more than happy to accept something other than this. All right. I feel these are generally the most intriguing, but I'm certainly willing to listen if you have a particular one that your group would like to do. Um, I have here set for November 25th through 29th, the Tuesday of that week, as the presentation for 3 of them, and then December 2nd as the presentation for the other 3. Now, this is a copy of the last semester. So I am not demanding that if you take Google searches, you have to do it then. All right. You can choose whatever date, the first ones or the second ones. How do I choose? It all comes down to first one who emails me. So if your group decides quickly that you want to do Walmart dominates, and you send that to me, first one gets it first. Okay, it's as simple as that. So if you have a choice, Walmart dominates. I would also ask you to have a second choice as well, because if someone has Walmart dominates, I would give you that second choice. Also, on the date that you and your group would wish, whichever week 15 or week 16 that you would prefer, I would also like for you to tell me that as well. All right. So you have two choices in your group. It is which case you wish and which of the weeks that you wish to present. All right. Given the situations, if I have four people on one week, I will allow those four people to present in that week. It might get a little long, but I'm willing to be accommodating. Okay. The case itself does not have to be performed live. If you wish to do the case, do the presentation, and record it, I will accept the recording as well. I would like everyone in the group to present the case online, or at least present one part of the case. And just, like I would like it to be a slide PowerPoint presentation. And I would like you please not to read the slides. That's an old thing that we teachers go through. Okay. And I would also like for you not to have a prepared script. I would not like you to read from a script as well. You're not going to get a script to be able to present things for your corporations. And I want you to be able to think on your feet. Okay. All right. So tonight we're going to have multiple things. We're going to talk about how to prepare for the case. I'll talk about the case structure. We're going to go through a small case ourselves, in which you're going to do a SWOT analysis and give recommendations, and then that will be the finish of the night. And so, without further ado, let us kind of move into discussion about the cases. So, how do you analyze a case? This is listed, by the way, online, so you can read the very same thing I am. And I'm going to risk something. I'm going to try not to read the slides as well. And so just try to give you an idea. One of the things that I wish to impart upon you is a framework, a way and a process for you to be able to analyze the case. And I hope this is a process and a framework that you can carry with you. So why do you have frameworks like this as well? Why do you go through these things? Well, there's several good reasons. Well, the framework will provide a comprehensive help you to have a coverage of the topics and the issues involved. In other words, it gives you a structure. It also gives you an easy way to communicate the issues that are involved and how you go about with solutions, okay? The last thing that a case will allow you to do is it gives you a consistency of analyzing different like corporations in the same framework. In other words, the framework gives you some groundwork so that you can measure consistently from one asset to the next, no matter what cases you ever have to be able to work through. All right. Structure is good. Structure is important. And this is why I'm proposing this. So what is the 5-step way in which you will analyze the cases? Well, before we go on, I just want to say a few basics about it if you've never done a case before. First, recognize that no one ever goes to a reading only once, all right? Or you never do an analysis the first time you will. Now, tonight we will, because I'm not going to have you spend 5 hours analyzing the case. But there's several things you need to do. And well, the first thing is read through the case first. Don't make notes yet, but then read through the case again. Usually a comprehensive analysis will take about 3 readings. once again, I'm not going to hold you to say and demand you do 3 readings, but usually it takes that many. If you got the idea in the second one, go for it. All right. Um, don't get trapped in thinking that there's an answer somewhere in the case. There may not be a single answer, and there may be. Um, Realize that not every marketing strategy works for every situation. And so realize that everything is unique and don't look for tricks. Okay. And then the last one to me, and what I think is the most important, is put yourself in the shoes of the decision makers when you're analyzing the case. When your group comes to present, I want you to think of yourselves as the rainmakers. You're the corporation that's coming in, that this particular company that you're studying, they have these issues and are not quite sure where to turn, but they're turning to you to come up with some idea of how to fix this. And so those are the mindsets you want to think of before you actually start analyzing. So the first thing that you need to do is create what's known as a situation analysis. So what's that? So a situation analysis is a snapshot, a moment in time to give you an idea of where you are in this particular environment in which you're working in. This is why we use the SWOT analysis, because the SWOT analysis is an excellent way to understand the internal and external strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats. It provides factual evidence of where you are at this particular moment in time. It allows you to give a framework to measure whether some issues are important or some are not. And what it can do is provide you with a greater understanding of where the issues actually were. So the last meeting we did, and we talked about Martha Stewart, and when you read through those things, you get a very clear picture of where Martha Stewart's failures were, or where the central issues were, and they in essence were with themselves. The situation analysis takes all of that information, provides it with a consensus of where you are, and then gives you the opportunity to make decisions and move on. So a couple of things just to point them out, and you can read through this, it's online as well, is realize that any fact can be a strength and it can be a weakness. And generally they are, okay? Each thing has its own predominant advantages and disadvantages. You also have to remember that there's a tendency to confuse opportunities with possibilities. Look at your particular environment, understand your own particular structures, the strengths within your organization. That ultimately can give you an idea of whether or not you have the capabilities to take advantage of these particular things, okay? The other damage also is that you make assumptions and missing information. It's not possible or realistic to be able to know that you have all the information possible. So one of the things that you will need to do is gather data on your particular case. And it's also important to understand that these cases are dated in their way. And so avoid looking into the future to see ultimately what the answers might be to whatever you think the proposed problems are. Okay. So research is good. So citations are great. Citations give you better grades. All right. So what I would like you to do is do a little research in the moment in time when your corporation is. That will give you a better understanding, mostly of the external environments that those corporations were working in. Okay. So step 3 is the statement of the problems. All right. Now, one thing it's important to understand is that the symptoms are not necessarily the problems. And so as it's stated in here, if a temperature is 103 degrees, that's a symptom, but it isn't necessarily the problem itself. A very competent nurse will pack you in ice to reduce your temperature, but it may not solve the problem. What you need to do is be able to collect as much information as you can, both internally and externally, to understand what the symptoms are attempting to tell you. And probably the best way that you can go through the process is the why question. All right. So if you look a little further here, this is kind of the structure that you go through when you're asking the why question. So sales have declined. Well, why? They declined. There's too many sales territories. Why are there too many sales territories unassigned? They are Salesforce turnover is double. Well, why is the turnover double? It began a year ago when the compensation plan was altered. This is the way, when you ask the why question, ultimately what you hope to do is drill down, ask yourself a sufficient amount of questions to come up with the real answer. Remember, a problem well defined is a problem half solved. You have to define the problem or problems sufficiently to be able to plan a way out. So once you've defined the problem, now we start talking about alternatives. Think in two ways, strategically and tactically. Think about the long-term ways in which you can take your assets and be able to move those to maximize the opportunities that are available, be able to minimize your weaknesses where you can, and eliminate threats wherever possible. Now, it sounds so nebulous when I say that, but when it comes through a discussion with your group members and you start to brainstorm together, these things are possible. Some things just require you to be able to do something small. Some are big problems and some are small ones. So I had a case with LG Smartwatch where one of the difficulties is that independent salesmen were not selling the LG smartwatches as much as others. That's a small problem versus a big one. And it's a small problem simply can be solved by giving some forms of compensation to the salespeople when they achieve certain sales goals. That's a little problem that can be solved by a very tactical solution. Others require major movements of assets and may even be a redesign of your current strategies. Remember also that whatever your particular alternatives are must be consistent with the visions of your goals of your particular corporation. And last, it's important to realize that an alternative is always the status quo. Because you have the status quo doesn't mean you're avoiding a decision. You're just saying that it is a conscious one based upon your evaluation that the better place to be is where we are now. And so the next is that you evaluate alternatives and recommendations. You come up with what you consider strategically and tactically as answers to the particular problems. And just make sure how well do the alternatives coincide with the SWOT analysis. Are you answering the questions that the SWOT analysis is bringing to you? And remember, what you're doing is you're coming up with practical alternatives for you to be able to come up with some consistent form of solving whatever you think the issues are within the organization. So what is the estimated time for this to complete a case? There's really not an exact time. Times are approximate. Just remember, dedicated reading, the more you do, the better you will be. But I would be surprised that a good case would take less than a week. Now, you're going to be making recommendations in the face of unknown conditions. And just remember that as long as your evaluations are thorough and as long as your assumptions are clearly defined, your recommendations will be justified, okay? And so this is the process order that you can use as a format and a framework for you to be able to work in your groups and be able to create the cases. And so what is the format of the case? Now, this is going to be a PowerPoint presentation. There does not need to be a paper. Your PowerPoint will be 30 minutes, no more. Brevity is the soul of wit. Doesn't mean that it can't be less, but it has to be concise. It says document format up there. There will be no document, all right? For the PowerPoint presentation, the formatting, that'll be left to the discretion of the group. You can use pictures and images, graphics. You can use videos. You can use whatever you need in order to present your case. And so this will be the format for the marketing plan that you're going to create in your course presentation. The first thing you're going to have at the very front is what's called the executive summary. Now, those of you who have been called in to do position papers in your corporations, or if you're been required to do a study, you might understand an executive summary if you understand that the higher ups rarely read more than the first page. Okay, kind of how they breathe through life. And so I'm going to tell you how to take that first page and make it live. All right. The executive summary will be a selection of the critical issues by the company in the case. It'll be the recommendations for the company based on their issues. It will be a synopsis of the plan. It'll be an overview, including goals and objectives, strategy elements, expected outcomes. The executive summary is written last, all right? The executive summary is after you do all the other work and you boil everything down into a consistent plan, okay? So you start with a one-page executive summary. The next part of your slides are going to be the overview. You're going to provide a brief history of your particular company that is described in your case. Give them any information that you have from the outside research. Describe the critical issues that you feel like need to be addressed in the plan. The major issues that will require resources and the minor issues that will come up. The next is you will provide a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And of course, this will be a detailed SWOT. And as I've said before, you might as well get used to it. You're going to get swatted to death while you're in the MBA program. So get this under your belt. After you do the SWOT analysis, you'll talk about how you're going to develop the competitive advantages. How do you match the firm's strengths to the opportunities to create capabilities in serving your customers' needs? Are those capabilities, are they based in operational excellence, product leadership, or customer intimacy? All three of these are defined in your books, and you can discuss them, what parts of those your corporation has more than others. And how are the capabilities and the advantages make apparent to your customers? The next is, how do you convert the weaknesses and threats into opportunities? And how can you minimize or avoid those weaknesses? How do you fix the liabilities? Do you have any? Are these liabilities, limitations apparent to your customers? Can you cure them or can you minimize them? And can the firm do everything, especially those that impact their ability to serve customer needs? From here, what you'll do is you'll think of a strategic focus. Does it follow any particular direction? Once again, I refer to the book. Do you use a strategy of aggressiveness? Are you going to be a diversification? Does your company require a turnaround? Do you need to drop in a defensive strategy, or do you need to look towards a particular narrow um, market that you're working with? And then finally, think of the strategy canvas and how does your firm provide focus and divergence from other things. Remember that it is your uniqueness that is what is sold to your customers. It is important for you to recognize being part of a given category of products, but it also needs to be taken into account where your advantages are. Finally, you're going to talk about your goals and objectives. Remember that your goals are broad, motivational, and maybe even vague. But what they do is they talk to your long-term future. It is the building of the vision that hopefully will combat the critical issues that you've mentioned. And then finally, come down with objectives. Remember that objectives are measurable. It is reasonable for you to attain them. Usually they're done within a specific time frame, and they are there to be measured to see whether you achieve success or failure. And so the last part of this, I will not ask you to do the implementation part, because this creative part, I feel, is the most important. I want you to include with objectives, how long you think it'll take you, and then whatever you feel like is the measurement for success or failure. Okay? All right. Okay. So just to give you a little idea also, we'll talk about the case in a minute, but for those of you, I talked about being able to have references and resources. Usually what we look for is what's known as APA style, when you do your citations and research at the end of your PowerPoints. So for any of you who've ever had to struggle when doing a bibliography, I want to show you a way of doing it in Microsoft Word that's very functional. I am a real fan of Microsoft Word. As a matter of fact, I can't stand Google Word, okay? It's one single value is that it can be shared, but I'd rather do everything in Word. So this is how you go about doing references in Microsoft Word. So if you look up, this is Microsoft Word 2019 or 365, I can't remember. Anyway, go to references, click on that, and then you're going to get this panel up here. Now, if you look up here, it says citations, managed sources, style, and bibliography. So let's say you're doing some research, you come up with this journal article, and you want to make this part of the citation that you're doing, or part of the paper that you're doing. Click on Manage Sources, and then what you're going to see is you're going to see this particular panel in the Source Manager. And if you notice, I've already got something here. It's called the Master List. So I've already put something there as well, okay? So this is a particular bibliography or that I've already put in, or citation. And so I'm going to use it. Well, I'll use it later. What I'm going to do is put in a new one. So I've got a source. I got a new journal article. I want to put it in. I click new. And so if you notice here, it says what type of source it is. I'm going to go to a journal article. And the first thing that they ask for is the author. So I'm going to click edit. I'm going to go to last name first. I'm going to add that. I'm going to add that. When you put in the authors, If you also notice, you have the advantage of moving them up and down so you can change which way it is. So if you did one first the wrong way, you can always take it out. You can even delete it if you want to. I say okay, and now if you notice, it's there. So now I come up with whatever the name of the journal article is. Put in the journal name, the year that it was produced. Usually pages is one of those absolutes that you need. If you look at where here it says show all bibliography fields, if you click on that, you'll find it used to be that in here when you do it, you would see like month and day. Rarely do they do it anymore. Usually volume and issue are two of the main things that you'll put in. So I'll say issue 1, volume 3. I'll click OK. And now, if you notice, I have that here, and I also have it here. Now, what I'm also do is I'm gonna click on this, and I'm gonna copy it over there. So now you can create a master list, and the master list will house your bibliography. Now, if you look here, if you notice, it says bibliography entry, and I've got this. I'm gonna close it. And now what I'm gonna do is I've got this blank page. Let's say I prefer doing my PowerPoints in Microsoft PowerPoint. I always have. You can do it on Google. It doesn't bother me that. I'm just showing you a way to build the bibliography in a much easier format. So I've got two that I've loaded. I click on bibliography. I click insert bibliography, and there it is. That's all you got to do. Now, I wanted an APA style. Let's say you were doing this for someone else, and let's say they said, no, we don't want it in APA, we want it in Chicago. Just click on Chicago and get it in Chicago style. And that's how it's done. Okay. There was no, it's fun. There was no single more valuable lesson when was in the MBA program and I did this. And I thought to myself, 20 years I fought with this stuff. Okay. And it could have been just that simple. This is one of the reasons why I find Word is much more functional. Okay. All right. So everybody with me. We're all copacetic. Okay, great. So let's move on. And what I would like us to finish the night with tonight is I'm going to put you in your groups, and I want to go through very quickly this particular, excuse me, this case that you're going to find right here, LG Smartwatch, okay? You'll find this listed under your Zoom meeting. Click on that, and it's going to open to this. This is a small case. It's only 10 pages. It won't take long to read, but I would like you in the space of about 30 minutes in your group to do a SWOT analysis of this particular case and come up with, based upon your SWOT, some recommendations about what you consider the best thing for them to do about this, okay? Okay, so I'm going to do this. I am going to start to put you in groups, in your groups, excuse me. And when you get in your groups, I would like you to read through the document as quickly as you could. Go ahead and start putting together a SWOT analysis. And then at 8, let's just draw the line at there. If anyone needs more time, I will. That we will come together, we'll talk about it, and then we'll finish. Okay? All right. So without further ado, let me go ahead and start putting together the groups. see. Okay, so three groups have full groups. Amanda and Cindy, you are basically by yourselves. So I'm going to open up all those rooms. Um, Go ahead and do the SWATs. Let's give it about 20 minutes and then we'll break out and we'll discuss. Okay. All right. there. So if you look at our list, we have a long history of businesses being a strength, financial resources, and a global footprint as its strengths. The weaknesses are that it was a small share of the overall market that LG has. The cost of those things were large, and there was really only one carrier. So, what opportunities are out there in the bigger market that you can see?
Partnering with those carriers, like having a partnership with several carriers.
Yes, because what that would do is it would allow you to extend the footprint of this, especially when we're talking about a product that has a unique advantage that you're trying to be able to convince whether or not this is an acceptable product. You know, for strengths, I'd also kind of put in here, like I said, it's a dynamically continuous innovation, but also its weakness is that it's a dynamically continuous innovation. So what that kind of says to you is that, as I said before, it could be a strength and a weakness at the same time. So other opportunities are there is in essence to create a market, or you could even say not only create the market, but then also set the standard as well. Set the standard because we're talking about a dynamically continuous innovation that they're eventually going to come up with. What would be a threat? Can anyone give me a threat to end this?
Apple or larger, other larger electronic companies, Apple being the main one.
So
Yes,
I read in the article that their price is rather high, so they would be more subject to economic downturns.
very good. Very good. So what you basically put all your eggs in one basket. You throw one big roll of the dice in trying to make this work. And if it doesn't work, you're in trouble. So one of the things that dragged Toys R Us down ultimately was the failure for the new Star Wars toys to be acceptable. Um, Toys R Us, you know, made a great deal of their fortune on franchise fees when they would pay for those given items, like that would come from Mattel and the others. And so when that didn't work, we had a disaster. Okay. So yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So would anyone, do any of you have any recommendations that LG should do at this point or what they might consider? Does anybody have an idea?
I think one of the things was they manufacture a lot overseas. Maybe manufacturing more in the US may change a little bit, maybe.
It certainly might. I mean, it would be a major change in a shift in the infrastructure, but it would also gain wider customer acceptance, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, I mean, North America, which would be hopefully a primary area to start with. That's very possible. Anybody else?
They really need to work on their brand positioning because if they are at the higher price mark, that's going to become a problem for them.
Right. And if I were to tell you or ask you to talk about LG's price point positioning, would you say they're on the high end or on the low end?
High end.
High end.
Yeah. And so you got to be very careful now that you're not going to continue a price point which is simply too large. Now, let's also say this. Innovations have a way of creating their own price points because they create unique niches in the market. So if it's properly marketed, the chances are they can make that work. That's also true. Okay.
I think another thing they have to get over would be brand loyalty for people. So if somebody, I'll take me for instance, I'm very loyal to the Apple brand. I have an Apple Watch, Apple iPad, Apple phone. So kind of trying to get over that hurdle of people who do have that brand loyalty and offering a product that will
Right.
make them be, disloyal to the brand that they're used to.
And you know what? As far as Apple people go, good luck. You
Very
you know,
true.
Apple people are loyal, all right? The loyalty comes quite simply because apples don't break much. Let me put it that way, okay? Let me put that much in because they're, everything breaks, all right? Just like the commercial says. But especially for what they have, for the given experiences that they bring and create, they are unparalleled. That's true. Did anybody think they should do nothing?
Well, not nothing, but I did like I wish I understood better like the cost of development for each unit because the
Yeah,
prices are so high. I wonder if they're doing it because they have to just to make any sort of a margin on it. So
that's
I
that's
was
an
I would just
excellent.
be interested to know like what the cost of production is. So if they could lower the price and still make money, would that make sense at first so that people get interested in it and then buy it at a higher price later once they're loyal to it?
That's an excellent question, Dominic. You're right. Okay. Um, I would think that when it comes to success on this for LG, they need to get a darn good contract with their carriers, and I would even sell it as a loss or find some way to make some reasonable justification with my carrier so that they could accept it for sale and find some way of achieving some kind of balance. I would try very hard to form a partnership with my carrier, whoever that is, to try to provide an easy access way to get my consumers into this market. Um, you know, you've got to be able to get your consumers to try something before they can accept it. And many times trial requires substantial discounts. It's almost like a juxtaposition in a way. You're not supposed to, but sometimes you have to. Okay. Um, the last thing and the reason why I mentioned maybe you're not, you should just not do the same is this is, or do it at all, is this is consistent with the concept that sometimes the status quo is the best answer. And there is a reasonable assumption in this particular case, and I'm kind of throwing you a curveball in this case, where it is not unreasonable for you to say, this may not be the right time to release this. Okay. So think of that as a solution. Now, if any of your groups would have come up with two entirely different solutions for this, and you grounded your particular opinions on good theory and logical deduction, you very well could both get A's because I'm not caring whether you have the answer I care about. But what I want you to be able to do is follow a logical process to come up with a logical conclusion. And so that's kind of what this whole thing is about. All right. I want you to think. All right. And I care more about your thinking than I care about you coming up with the right answer when it comes to these cases. Okay. Um, so follow the process, go through the structure, do the work, make the recommendations, do the PowerPoints, give me your sources, and that's how you make this thing work. Okay. And hopefully what you'll do is you'll be able to build the skill set that you can take with you really anywhere. You can say, well, Dr. Shells, where's that 5-hole case study thing? I've got something I got to do, a project for my company in a month. Let me see where that framework is. Kind of what I want you to wet your whistle with this right now, okay? Okay. Well, look, this is as far as we need to go tonight. I think you all did an excellent job. First off, before I get to you, Group B, Jay, you know, he pulled the trigger quick. They're going to do Uber drives, okay? So Uber drives is out. Let me also say this, and I forgot to add this one, But the Tesla one is a very good case in the book as well. And if you would want to do Tesla, you might want to consider that. And so let me go back and we'll show you those cases again. Here we go. And so Uber's out, and you have Google searches, Apple, Walmart, Starbucks, Netflix, and Tesla. All right. You can take as much time as you need to decide which one, but remember, first tie goes to the runner. So whoever gives me that request first, they'll be the one. And make sure you also have a second option as well. Okay. So tell me what night you wish, and then, or excuse me, what case, and then what night you wish to present. Okay. Well, look, we're finished for the night. Once again, I hope you're all doing well. This will be like our last class before then, but realize this, I'm always only an email away or a Zoom meeting if you want to get with me. We will have two final ones. Excuse me, we have one group that will present early, but we'll have two final classes, and those will be the presentations. Remember, the presentations can be pre-recorded. I will accept those. I would like each member to speak 30 minutes, no more. All right, 30 minutes. And what your deliverable will be that I will use I want you to send me your slideshow presentation so I can use that while the presentation is going on. Okay. What will happen is that night is I will make notes. I will scan the notes from my own writing so you get to see the raw information. And usually what I'll have is I'll have the grade right at that time. Okay. Okay. All right, folks. Have a good night. I hope you're all well, and your family, I hope, as well. And if you need anything from me, as I said, please email me or we can Zoom at any time. Okay. All right, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, folks. Take care.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Bye bye.